Welcome to this webinar where we will be discussing the draft standards on digital product passport. The draft standards are currently out for public inquiry, so it's possible for everyone to provide your inputs to all of the drafts. For information, we are recording this webinar. It's going to be published on our website. So if anyone needs to go back and repeat what was said, you will have the possibility to do so, but also to share the link with colleagues and friends. We will not be recording the Q&A at the end, but we can publish frequently asked questions afterwards if people want to. The Q&A will be held after all of the presentations. And I'm going to show you the agenda for today. Just a moment. So first we'll have a short intro on why we're doing this, which is sort of the role of the standards in a product lifecycle, the steel supply chain versus all of the modules here. We're going to go in more on the level of detail needed for different aims and scenarios. We're going to dig deeper into the specificities in the furniture supply chain. And we're also going to have some industrial perspectives on how DPP connect different companies. So first of all, I'm going to do a very short introduction, which is also going to be a repetition for most of you. And the rest of the presentations are insights from our committee members. And as you can see, they are all representing quite different product groups that will all be affected by the DPPs. And again, after each presentation, you'll be able to ask questions to that presenter. But also you can ask questions at the end in the Q&A. We'll also make sure to have a short break in the middle of all of the presentations. My name is Laura Linnala. I am a project manager here at SIS, the Swedish Institute for Standards, and I am the project manager of the Swedish National Mirror Committee on Digital Product Passports, which is why I'm going to do the introduction. And then I'm going to hand over to all of the speakers one by one. So why are we doing this standardization? So the digital product passports are a key of the Ecodesign regulation, as we all know by the abbreviation ESPR. The ESPR is one part of a bigger goal, which is to have Europe as the first circular region by 2050. To do so, we require a lot of information about the products and materials that we have that are being traded on the European market. So the Ecodesign regulation replaces the previous Ecodesign directive and now has a broadened scope. So now it includes all types of product. The Ecodesign directive only included energy-related products. Product passports, the DPPs, is what we call one of the crown jewels of the Ecodesign regulation, because we see also that traceability is required to enable so much more that we see set out in the regulation. So we have a standardization request issued to us by the EU Commission, which tasks us to develop the standards by first quarter of 2026. And the standardization request is set out to the European standardization organization CEN and CENELEC. So all of the countries that want to be a part of the DPP standardization are commonly developing these standards that are needed to support the regulation. And here it's important to understand that or make sure that we don't confuse regulation and standardization. So the standards will be sort of the how when the regulation is the what. And the aim of this whole thing with the digital product passports, one of the aims is to enable information sharing on the products placed on our single market. Yeah, and just a note, the DPP requirements will be imposed on almost all product groups. A few product groups are excluded. So, for instance, food, feed, and medicine. Who have been involved in this? So we have European national standardization bodies as a part of the Joint Technical Committee, the European Technical Committee that are responsible for developing these standards. We have roughly, I think, 24 standardization bodies involved in that. We have somewhere over 300 experts from all over Europe involved in this. We have a number of partnering organizations and quite a long list of liaison committees. A liaison committee is a technical committee developing other types of standards within a field that is affected by the DPPs. So when there is a technical committee that is interested in listening into what is happening in the DPP standardization, or even want to be able to have a say, we create this liaison, a bond between us and them. So this has been a work that has really stretched out quite far and wide. We have very many people from all over Europe, and in some cases even beyond Europe, involved in this, because the standards that we are developing are going to be very important. All of the European national standardization bodies that are involved in this have national mirror committees that together represent that specific country. The Swedish National Mirror Committee consists of these companies. So we have a big National Mirror Committee. As far as we know, one of the biggest ones in Europe. And we have quite wide representation here from different types of product groups, different sizes of companies, and different areas, which we are very happy for. And we have experts representing all of these companies, where many of them are also directly part in the European work, where they sit in working group, in the different working groups, and together help to actually draft the standards that we are now balloting on. And just a very short overview of how a standard is developed. And this is only an overview of the process. It looks quite simple here. What we want to show here is that from the decision to start drafting, we have a number of different ballots that we have to go through to be able to ensure that the drafts are as good as possible, and that we have a wide consensus moving forward in this process. And we have a number of working group meetings in between all of the ballots where we develop the consensus needed. In this case, we've had a very long line of meetings. The working groups have had probably weekly meetings for a year or so now. Usually this whole process is roughly 36 months. In this case, we are splitting that in half because we are in a hurry because we have a deadline set out in our standardization request. And we are now here. It looks like we're in the middle, but quite technically we're a bit closer actually to the finished standard than it looks like. So this is the public inquiry stage is the last chance where we can actually provide technical comments to the drafts. And the technical comments would be the comments that could significantly change the contents. After this inquiry phase, all of the working groups in Europe are going to meet a lot of times to look at all of the proposed improvements that we receive, which could be, I don't know, a few hundred comments for each of the for all of the drafts, for each draft. And then we update the drafts to reflect what we find to be consensus in the working groups. And then we have a final ballot just to make sure that the content is good enough. And then we go for publication. And as I said earlier, the publication is going to be in first quarter of 2026. So we're quite close. We are developing 8 different standards for the whole DPP system. Most of you have seen this list many times. The standards are, in our work, we call them modules. So all of these different modules sort of represent different parts of a product life cycle. They could be relevant in different parts of a life cycle, and we are going to get into that more deeply later on. But you can see here that it's quite a wide set of standards that we are developing. This is being developed in 3 different working groups, and we are heavily involved from Sweden in all of the work going on here, and we've had quite a big impact on the drafts, especially the ones where we have sort of the highest interest. And as you see also, we are not standardizing the contents of the DPPs. We are standardizing the system for the DPPs. So how the DPPs are going to actually work. So it could be seen as sort of the infrastructure between the whole or behind the DPPs. All right, that's all from me. I hope this was somewhat of an introduction to why we're doing this and who has been involved. I'm going to hand over to our next speaker, Lennart Strandberg from Zeller Tech. Lennart, you can take over the presentation by pushing the button up on the control panel.
I'm sitting on the mobile phone, so I think it's better it's better if you do it from your side.
Absolutely. I will. Yeah. I'll change your slides, and you'll just have to give me a beep when it's time.
Yeah, exactly. And the first is this switch point. Yes. Okay. My name is Lennart Strandberg. I'm the chair of the Mirror Group, the National Mirror Group here in Sweden. And as Laura has pointed out, there has been a tremendous load of work that has been carried out throughout more than a year now. And we are sort of coming to a conclusion. But one thing that we have noticed when going through the material is that it's not very easy to find a path through all the documents. And the documents I'm talking about is 8 modules that Laura mentioned before. Myself, I'm representing SwitchPoint. It's a company dedicated to DPP. We're only working with DPP, with solutions and consultancy. Next page, please. We have, as you can see here, there is a square on the right-hand side, and that's what we're going to discuss later on, and that's also the scope of the 8 modules. But to give you a glimpse of what we are talking about, we are presenting here the whole chain from when you extract material like wool, cotton, and oil and so forth as raw materials, and that's step one in this case. And that material will then be the sort of the starting point for the next step that's in the box here, and that's the material that we are the processing, and this is both yes and no, the start of a product itself, but it could here be more intermediary products such as steel pipes, sheets, wool and cotton sheets that after that will be used for the production and the start of a real product. And that's number three. That's the real manufacturing. And the manufacturing itself, after that's done, you have real products like a shirt, like a lawnmower, or a furniture that's ready to be sold in the market. So that was step number three. Number four, we end up in distribution, and distribution is when the products are leaving the factory, sort of, and then it's transported. We are talking about storage, we are talking about packaging and so forth, and then the material are out in the market, distributed. The use phase then, when you and I buy the products, then it's sold in the market, and we are then sort of handling that. We are using it, and we are also going to the next step, the end of life. The end of life, it could be you destruct the material, you burn it, or whatever it's appropriate for that material, and that's something that will be sort of added in the delegated acts afterwards, the one that we are waiting for, the content, as Laura mentioned before. It's also very important to talk about what's then. We'll get back to the in scope for the standardization itself. Next picture, please. We talked about the first step here, and that's sort of the upstream activities, everything that handles the material and so forth before it ends up in the manufacturing. And below that, then the product is out in the market. Then it's downstream, and downstream is not that much defined by the standard itself, although everybody is talking about reuse, repairability, and so forth. We are talking about traceability. Well, traceability is both upstreams and downstreams. But again, then next picture, please. We have, from our point of view, we have tried to divide the functionality that you need in order to produce a DPP, and that's also the thing that's in scope for the product itself. And we have divided the process or functionality in 5 steps. Number 1 is collecting of data. The data that you have if you're a company in different solutions, different solutions. It could be a production solution, it could be an ERP solution, it could be a PIM system, a PLM system, or whatever. And all of that represents data points that are interesting for a DPP to be made afterwards. When you have collected all the information, you have to create the DPP. And in order to create the DPP, you must have a master, and that master is not yet ready because that's the delegated act. Let's take an example from the textile. We don't know how many data points that will be defined for that. But what we're discussing here is not exactly the data itself. It's more the piping, the solution that you have to have around in order to make it work. When you have created the DPP, then you have to validate that you have the right format, the right data, and so forth. And then you have to convert it to some of the proposed standards, like JSON, XML, or whatever it's proposed. And the last step is that you publish the information and make it reachable for the public, for companies, through different means. But the most important part here is that's the 8 documents, the 8 modules, and they have to be mapped into those 5 steps. So where does the number 1 come in? That's the unique identifiers. Well, it's quite early in the process. It's in number 2 actually. It's or even before that. And the data carrier, of course, that's also quite important. That's also quite early in the process. Then we have 6 more documents, and all of those have to be mapped in to this sort of way of looking at it. And we can take number 8, for instance. Number 8 is the APIs. How do you reach a published DPP? And all of those discussions will be held afterwards, and I will not get into this right now because that's more sort of technical standards. But in order to understand how to understand those 8 documents, it's important to see a red thread or a path through that. And is it possible from the guidance of the 8 documents to develop a DPP solution or not? Or do we miss any information from either the standards or from the Commission itself? But I think the next days that we are sitting together, the 8th and 9th, I think it was, in September, that will be sort of a defining moment for how we understand those documents and make something out of it. I think that concludes my very, very short presentation. I could talk for days about this, but it's not the right time right now. So please, Laura.
Thank you for that, Lennart. Do we have any questions in the audience? Please just raise your hand. Thomas, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Laura, and thank you for the presentation, Lennart. I had a couple of questions or clarifications. You were talking about the scope and that it was only processes within the factory gate that were included in the scope. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you start your own thinking about what's a DPP and where do you start with that. And that's why we have sort of defined those 5 steps. And it depends on, it could be different from factory to factory. Where do you start with those with that kind of thinking? Is it before or is it in the middle of a process, or when do you start it? Was that clear, or was it foggy?
How I interpreted that is that it's not quite decided what the scope is. Is that correct then?
Yeah, I mean, there will be different kinds of trying to understand what all of those 8 modules are for and how to sort of to place them into an understandable chain of events inside a company.
Okay, so the different modules are different parts of the life cycle of the product.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And one more question, if that's all right. You mentioned of the 5 steps, you had validation. Is it to decide if that will be internal validation or external third-party validation?
This is internal validation. It's about your own data. Do you have the right formats and so forth? There is no external validation here, except if there is a validation that will be used from the 8 modules or not. We don't know that yet. If someone would like to secure that I'm the supplier X and not Y and so forth, but that's something else.
Yep, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Not that I can see. If any questions arise, note them down, either write them in the chat or just wait until the Q&A. Thank you so much, Lennart. We are moving forward to the next presenter, Johan Andersson from SSAB. Please go ahead and you can take over the presentation.
Thank you. So I will continue where Lennart stopped and exemplify a little bit about the supply chain and how the different 8 modules kick in this supply chain. So here we have a simplified model of a supply chain, where for the steel, it starts with raw material. Sorry. That could be iron ore or steel scrap and other stuff. And then we have intermediate products in our production, and then there are the individual products that we put on the market. And normally, this is the first product that is given a DPP. So everything before that is, as Lennart said, considered as raw material or other substances that is necessary. So in many chains, value chains, steel is the first one that put on a DPP. And then, of course, our customers make components and final products and so on. And at every step when that is put on the market, there is a new DPP put on by those producers. We believe that depending on when the delegated acts for steel comes, that this will come into place mid-2027 or maybe late 2027 or early 2028, but we don't know more than that for the moment. And we know also that there is a goal to have everything in place for all products by 2030. So how does this fit in with the 8 modules that Laura and Lennart talked about? Here I put them in, and also the preliminary standard number on top here. And if you make it a little bit more understandable, you could say that the first ones, the 1 and 2, they are about the identification, company, facility, model, batch, product, and so on. And the second one, data carriers, is about how you display that on a product or with radio transmitters and so on. And then you have access rights, which roles that are in there in the number 3, and they have data authentication in number 7. They fits together. The yellow ones here are about interoperability and exchange of data and the APIs that we heard about. And then finally, we have the backup and archiving in number 6. So they kick, of course, in different parts of the value chain. So if we look at what's on the steel product, as when we have it in our production, we will utilize part of the unique identifiers in our own production course. We can build in offline data in the DPP code. And here I have two examples. One is a serial number and another one is a production date. So that could be built, for example, in our stock handling and things like this before we put it in on the market. So I think that is quite interesting to utilize this possibility with the DPP for internal handling. It doesn't require that you are connected to the database either. But then we have, of course, when we put it on the market, and there it comes in also exactly how you have to write the code and how you have to print it and so on. And it is said in the standards that it should be on the product and that it should be a permanent solution that goes on along the whole life of the product. In our case, we will work with a labeling system like this, where you can scan the QR code, and if this sticking out part falls off, we hope that the remaining part of the sticker will stick there. And when you scan that, you come into the website and can see all the data about the product. So that's when we put the steel product onto the market. And then we have the component producer, our customers. Here we have a lot of modules that kicks in. Of course, what do they have the right to see? What do they benefit from see? You know, and here we have to coordinate with the customers what is the benefit. This is a lot of communication rules, you can say, in this. But of course, most customers don't want to have a PDF or download a PDF or get an email. That they want integration into their ERP systems, into their production systems. And that's a reason why we have this module number 8, the API definitions. So it can go, the data of the DPP can go seamless into the customer systems along the whole value chain. And then when we go to the later part of the value chain, of course, the unique identifiers and data carriers continue there, and it's another set of data that is relevant here, and another set of user roles, especially in the user phase and the end-of-life phase. And we also have the data storage point here, where we have to assure that the data is available also after the company ceased to exist, for example. And here we also see the possibility from SSAB's point of view, and I hope for other companies as well, to add more than the mandatory authority-defined parameters, like weight of the products, how to order one more carbon footprint, more extensive information about that, the recycled content, how to weld, how to repair, and of course how to sort this in different fractions and similar things like this. So one should see DPP not just as a tool for the by EU or by authority defined data, but also as a platform for everything that is needed in the whole process along the whole value chain. So if we look at this, I mean, this value chain was very simplified. I mean, when we talk to Volvo, for example, they say, yeah, we have 50,000 suppliers, okay? And their suppliers have thousands of suppliers and so on. So you can see this is a very complex flow, and this means also that it will be literally zillions of data points and flow combinations in this. But if I should try to give some recommendations based on our experience from working with this for 3 years, I would say, first of all, start now. Map your data, because you will need to understand from where they come and how they come there and how stable they are. Make pilots. They don't have to be big, but you need to understand how it works and try it out and get reactions from suppliers and downstream actors. And also, like this, build your network. And you're very welcome also to contact me if you have any thoughts or questions. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Johan. Do we have any questions from the audience? Topi, go ahead.
Hi, Johan. Thanks for a great presentation. I have a very sort of steel-specific question related to the individual product and component layer or phase. Have you conceptually decided whose responsibility it is when, say, a steel coil is spliced by a steel service center and thus divided into many different parts? Whose responsibility? Is that something SSAB is addressing, or do you see that that is the responsibility of the supply chain regarding traceability?
So I mean, it's our responsibility all the way until we put the product on the market, right? So that could be either selling a coil to an external company that slits it, and then from that on, it's the slitting company that takes the responsibility to produce an own DPP for that product when they put that on the market. They can, of course, utilize the DPP information from us and then just add like the electricity consumption or whatever they add on top of it. So it should be very easy. But when it comes to our own slitting lines and own fabrication, we take, of course, the full responsibility until it's slitted and put on the market.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, Johan. I had a question regarding, you showed some things that could be included, or information that you could get from scanning this QR code. Yes, I was just wondering, first question, if this is examples or if this is requirements in the standard?
First of all, we don't know, because it's the delegated acts is not published. So, I mean, for one example is weight. We don't know if that is going to be mandatory or not. I think so. Carbon footprint for sure, but it's not. We don't know how that will be defined, what kind of report that is behind it. So, for example, there might be the EPD report that should be shown here, and then we probably want to show the PEF report as well. So even if it's mandatory, there is possibility to add other versions of it. In our case, this is just example. In our case, we will have probably something close to 200 data points for each product. And I would assume that something like 50 or so will be mandatory. That's my guess.
And do we know when-ish that these requirements will be set? What needs to be included?
We don't know when the delegated acts for steel will be published. It was said during 2026. I'm not so sure. There are different opinions about that, but maybe someone else here in the meeting have more details. I think late 26 or 27. And then you have 18 months to realize this.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. And the last question will be from Elin.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And I also had a question regarding the timeline. I think you showed on your first slide where you said then the delegated act for steel mid-27, and this is what I've heard as well regarding this working plan and where they have announced when it will come. But then you mentioned that that all products, the goal is that all products will be included in 2030. That was new to me. What did you mean there? Do you mean like end products that contain steel, or products in general, or is it through the ELV with this passport for cars that you're talking about here?
Laura.
Yes, this is the information that we've been given, that the whole DPP system covering most product groups that are included in the scope should be functional in 2030. What this also means in terms of the standardization is that all separate product groups need to develop they need to base their own DPPs on the standards that we are developing now. There is a list of prioritized product groups in the EU Commission, and they are rolling out one product group at a time. After the first few product groups have been rolled out, we assume that there are going to be more bigger bulks of product groups, because it's going to go faster in a few years. But it does seem quite, I would say, ambitious to have all of the product groups ready in 2030. But that was the original intention behind the DPP system.
But still, this working plan that you refer to, I was under the impression that they will deal with this product by product through these working plans, and then the DPP will be mandatory when they have set that as a mandatory requirement on that product group. It's not that they will say, okay, now DPPs are mandatory for all products within the ESPR scope, or will it still be a delegated act for each product group, and that's when the requirement kick in for that product group, so to say?
Exactly, because we need to have specified for each product groups what data points are expected to be included.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, it seems ambitious, 2030. I agree, but let's see then. Thanks for the explanation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, a very short question from Anna, and then we have to move on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just you were saying that there should be an API to the ERP systems. So I wonder, will there be a central database for all the information, or who will be responsible for keeping the information over time? If a supplier will go out of business, who's responsible in 10 years to keep the information?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, but it's defined in the standards that in this archiving module, that it is the responsibility of the economic operator, in our case, our company, right? And that includes also the backup. We are responsible for that the data is available even if we would disappear from the market. Okay. And how, we don't know. But I assume that we hire a third party to make sure that that is available. But then you start to think, okay, how will that be paid? When we are not existing anymore, and so on. But I'm sure this is going to, we're going to find solutions for that.
Yeah, it wasn't a short question, but thank you anyway.
Thank you so much, Anna and Johan. Just to add to that, it's going to be a decentralized system, and we expect that there's going to be some type of a backup system that is centralized, and more details about the backup and so on can be shared when we know more. All right, next presenter is Staffan Olsson from GS1. Staffan, you can take control of the presentation and do it yourself, or you can.
I'll make an attempt to. So it looks like I'm in control already. So how are we on time? I should have ended 2 minutes ago.
I mean, we'll try to speed up the rest of the parts.
Okay, so I'll skip some. So hello everyone, I'm Staffan Olsson from GS1 Sweden. Also supporting me in the background is Dennis Dobrovolskis from H&M. We were supposed to do this together, but for various reasons, workload at H&M and stuff like that. So I took the lead, but Dennis will chime in whenever he thinks that I say something incorrect or want to add something. So this is about product identification granularity, a very specific topic within the DPP infrastructure, but it's quite actually an important one. So this is, I'm not going to skip this one because I think that is important. So we talk about DPP a lot and we talk about Europe a lot, but the drive to manage data in supply chains is not only for ESPR and it's not only for Europe. So there's a large number of regulations in Europe. There are at least 10 regulations in Europe that require DPP. It's not only the ESPR. So all the regulators kind of look at the DPP solution and, oh, that's a simple way to solving our reporting problem. So let's introduce DPP also for detergents or for toys or for construction products, which are not covered by the ESPR. So actually the scope of the standardization goes also beyond the ESPR, but also this is the first region in the world that does this. So you see here to the right, there are regulations also in other parts of the world. So they also look at what happens in Europe. And there are also multiple other alternatives being initiated from UNECE have their DPP project. ISO has a standardization effort, so it's somewhat confusing. So it's a good thing if we could get this right from the beginning, so everyone else can harmonize themselves with this. So the common thing about all this is that you require data from supply chains, which is kind of what we're here to discuss. I will skip some of this stuff. You've seen it before, many of you. So I'll go straight into the draft document on product identification, the module 1. So the ESPR requires, in the ESPR itself, in the frame regulation, it requires that you can identify products on various levels. So you can identify them on model, batch, and item, and I will come back to what that means, what the definitions are. And this is also reflected in the document. So those of you that have already reviewed it, the first round, have seen these definitions. And those of you that are longing to do it, you will find it when you get into this document. So the definitions inside the unique identification document, here are some of the relevant definitions for this specific topic. So it's the unique product identifier. It's a unique string of characters that identifies a product that also enables a web link to the DPP. Just like Johan just showed, that's one way of doing it. How you embed your product identifiers into a web address. So that forms a UPI. And these product identifiers can identify a model, which is kind of the version of a product which all the instances of the product are the same. And then you have the batch level and the single unit item level. These are the terminologies used also in the regulation itself. So I put some GS1 examples just to organize myself because that's what I know best. There are other compliant identification schemes that can do the same thing, but this is how it's done using GS1 standards. So the model is used for, traditionally you use the model identifier for making purchases. So when you order something from your supplier for a new product, then it's usually the model number that you order. I want this type of shirt, or I want this type of hat, or whatever you want, a mobile phone. This is what you order. You don't order a jacket from a specific batch or a specific instance of it. You order that model. So that's how that is used. That's also the identifier you traditionally find on anything in a retail store right now that are using the GS1 standards for that. And there's an example on how that can be created using GS1 standard. On the batch level, that's when you need to track and trace products and identify all the instances of the product that are kind of produced in the same day with the same input materials. And if something goes wrong, you need to track where those products, the defect products, went, and maybe recall them or get in touch with whoever bought them. That's when you need batch number identification. And in most supply chains, this is what you track. Otherwise, just tracking the model is not that, not that relevant. So it's a batch level that is usually done for product traceability. And then item level is used to identify each single instance of a product. So if you need to know the specific, you have these two t-shirts, so the same model, the same batch, but one of them is worn more, and you want to send them secondhand. Maybe you want to decide which one you get, or you want to do something else to that instance. So these are kind of the definitions of this. In the document itself, in the unique identifiers document, there is an annex. It's a non-normative recommendations. For me personally, I think we should get rid of all that stuff in the normative standards and move them into an implementation guide, because the standard should only specify what you have to do. But in the draft, that's just one of my comments. Maybe that will not happen. So it's not me personally that decide this. But this annex is there, and so the group has defined what are the criteria. Well, if any of these situations happen, then you need item identification, or you're recommended to use item identification. So it's products that are repaired or refurbished, and you need to track what you did to it. You add a component, you introduce a spare part. Products that can be upgraded or enhanced by changing parts or components. If you have embedded software for those type of products, if that can be upgraded. So anything basically that you need for asset management is of course, you need to keep track of each individual item. The model and the batch is not really enough if you have any of these situations. So I think these are quite relevant, these recommendations, but they're not part of the normative standards. This is what you have to do. So the expectations and recommendation, I would say the expectations from my side, and I hope Dennis agrees with me, is that the delegated acts will specify the minimum granularity requirements. So this is what you have to do for each product category. So these will be in the delegated acts. So what we're standardizing now is just a system that is capable of doing all these levels depending on the requirements. But also the expectation is that it will be allowed for economic operators that place product on the market to use more granular product identification than you are mandated to do, because there may be other reasons than legal reasons that you want to support other types of things. So, but you're not allowed to have it less granular. Also, a recommendation, there has been a lot of discussion within the CIRPAS project and any other pilot projects that you need to have an capability to transform and add granularity downstream. So the product has an identifier at model or batch level, but then you suddenly have the need to identify it at item level. And then there's all kinds of discussions on how you add that serial number. If you should issue a completely new identifier at item level, or if you add a serial number, and where do you add that? How do you make sure that two downstream players don't by accident add the same serial number? So the recommendation is that to go as granular as you will possibly need. So if there's an expectation that in some cases there may be a need for item identification, just add it from the beginning. And hopefully this will be in the delegated acts, because the change of granularity process, it adds a lot of complexity. And this is complex enough without that. So my recommendation is that to go as granular as you need. So Dennis, do you have anything that you would like to add if you're on the call?
Yeah, I'm on the call. Thank you so much, Staffan, for this presentation. No, just to stress what you just said and what Johan said. Do the tests, work on data, because more than anything else, this is going to be a data exercise. If you need to capture data on item level, you need to have system capacity to do that. And what Staffan just said about choosing the level of granularity from the beginning, it's very important because it's a one-way street. If you have to go to item level, you will not be able to jump from batch to item, because if this information is not captured properly, if this information is not printed properly on the product, you will probably not know which item it is. From item, you will be able to hopefully deduce which model and which batch it is, but not the other way around. So please study requirements, do the POC, do the analysis, and try to choose your proper way of or level of granularity from the beginning. Yeah, I think that's it from my side.
Yeah, and myself as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you to both of you. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Crystal clear, where everyone is getting coffee.
Exactly.
Never know.
Maybe a bit of both. Well, okay, that's perfect. I actually want to propose a very short break since we've been going on now for an hour. So let's have a 7-minute break, and let's come back 11:10. Caffeinated and everything, and after that we're going to hand over to Viggo from Lingon. All right, so back 11:10. Thank you. All right. I hope we are all back now from the break. And Viggo, if you're back, please get into your presentation, take control of the presentation here in Teams, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. I'll see if more people turn on their cameras or not. People are back. I remember in school we had like the 15-minute. Those days are long gone from remote work. Now you don't have 15 minutes for people to come in late. It's more like 15 seconds. So I'll give almost 1 minute for people to come back and have their copies ready. And I'll try controls. Right, I'm in control, which is nice. All right, it's 1, 1, 1, 1. That's a great plot to start. My name is Viggo. I'm driving product development at Lingon Certificates. And if I sound like we joked this morning, Lingon Berry White, it's because my lovely daughter has given me some new kind of virus, which is in season. And I think that's a good start. Actually, we just had our first conversation. She's 2 years old, and we had a real conversation. She told me what she likes, what she doesn't like, which is fantastic. And here we are working with furniture, and furniture producers, they create great products. They tell their own stories. They have a design language, but they don't speak human. And in 2 years' time, a chair needs to be able to speak human. It's very, very silent as of today. You can go on a product page and you can read all about it, but it doesn't speak until now. And our focus is really talking and working with the producers. So they have stories for every product. It's lovely. And for us, it's great to work with this, because more than just supply chain, collecting the parts and optimizing and making a great production line, every piece, every product has its own story as well as its journey. And this is something that we try to capture, what it means, because ultimately this will be a new relationship with whoever uses the product. We won't go so much into if you think about it visually, in my head at least, the supply chain is to the left and the consumer end user is on the right. Bear with me, but that's just how my mind thinks about it. So if I say right, that means consumer side. And I envy SSAB, because they can do more of a bottom-up approach. And I envy some other actors here that would go under the label as an economic operator here in the standards, where they will create digital product passports, but they don't have that many people on the left and not that many variants on the right, meaning the supply chain actors and the consumer side. The producer, however, has a lot to the left and even more to the right, perhaps. And this really is a catch-22 problem, because right now the industry is disconnected. The supply chain, while we have good examples, just like SSAB showed, where we do bottom up, there is, I would say, almost 100% gap somewhere along the way to the producer. And we have, looked at the market for the EU, and these are producing companies in the EU. That's 237,000 companies in the EU alone. And we know that this will also affect companies outside of the EU trying to sell products in the EU or exporting, importing, etc. So SSAB, like Johan showed, can create digital product passports. And I will exemplify this with a story, actually. So we work with a fantastic designer and producer called Ingridsdotter. They did a collaboration recently with a group called Interesting Time Gang, and together they created a piece called Leave. And the tabletop, it's a table, and the tabletop is produced of discarded fishing nets. And the bottom half is a metal piece inspired by the original designer Jonas Bolin's rowing exercises. So it has this whole story. But even more than that, there was a will from Ingridsdotter to produce something that has a minimal impact on the environment, reusing all discarded materials, and where there were virgin materials, find the best alternative possible. So she turned to her first level suppliers, who she works very closely with, who bend steel. I might mix up the names, but one famous one that actually produces the furniture is Källemo, a Swedish furniture producer. And they have, for a specific chair, they might have up to 27 first-line suppliers. So for this table, it's a very few components. It's basically the tabletop, it's the legs, some plastic components, and some screws. So very few. But she wanted to have fossil-free steel, which is great. And we know that it exists. She talks to her first-line supplier, and it's like, no, it can't really get a hold of it. Carlson's Forge has been or Källemo has been in the industry, and they talk to their very, very talented steel shapers and benders and can do magic with steel. They're like, no, we don't have that on the shelf. It's hard to get, basically. She does then what most producing companies don't do. She actually circumvents and goes all the way down to the raw material, contacts SSAB, and SSAB is like, yes, we have plenty of fossil-free steel, but no one's asking for it. Okay, at least not in the furniture industry. So that's a clear example of where the gap exists right now in the supply chain. So we have demand, even coming from consumers. I want to make informed purchases. You have producing companies that want to and do the right thing, but there are data gaps. The data doesn't flow to the left into the supply chain all the way down to the people making fossil-free steel. And we have the other problem that the data doesn't flow from the raw material all the way up to the producing company. And ultimately, it's the producing company right now that is very responsible and liable for making sure that the data is correct. So we have this kind of catch-22 moment right here, where the supply chain isn't ready, the data isn't ready, but you have to do something. So we often say that we have to do the best we can and stay calm. If you do the best you can, you won't be penalized. We'll see what the delegated act does. But looking into the draft, I think the disconnected problem is really a problem right now of scattered information. We have good data. This is what we have seen. The information is being addressed in module 4 of the interoperability standards. And more than anything, I think this will drive the programmatic access forward. Right now, it's done 70 to 80% manually. I would say even further. Very little is collectible by APIs. This has to change. This has to go beyond just being a producer of DPP and having programmatic access. It has to go to the great data sources that we have in terms of Eco Portal that stores and work with local entities to create reports called EPD reports that have LCA data, all these great metrics that will ultimately go into the DPP. So what we do to kind of ease this transition is to see what data sources can we use, how can we leverage tools like AI to remap this and help the producer not create more overhead, but just reorganize existing data. Yeah, I'll move on a little bit here. So the harsh reality is most producing companies won't be able to do this on their own. We talk about the backups of data, and that's a big part of being a service operator. That's what we label ourselves as, Lingon certificates in this kind of semantic of the DPP system. I think the role of service. Yes,
Vinko, just a comment. I think you just flip forward on your own computer.
Oh. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Johan. I will end with that. So we will have to take a bigger responsibility as service operators than just backup. We will have to do a lot of the actual data compilation and integration work. That's what the reality is looking like. And we have now a project that we're running with the consortium to dive into this and really work with the supply chain side of this. That is, again, kind of a catch-22 because it is not part of the DPP directive. It really falls on the producing company, but you can't really do it without being inside of the supply chain. So we are trying to map out how API-ready platforms are, what can be reused, and creating specific tools for different parts. We have found some key learnings from this project so far that has been running for a little bit less than a year. Relationships beyond the first level from a producer side is very non-existent, I would say. Like I mentioned, a chair can have 27 direct suppliers, and then you multiply that. And it can go as deep as 7 levels. Where the data gaps exist are unknown, but we know that they pretty much exist on each supplier leg. So that's a huge problem to solve. So even if the raw material extractors do a great job of putting DPPs on batch level, on cartons being shipped out, we will have gaps that needs to be fixed on, let's say, forges or painters, etc., where that data doesn't flow freely. I've had discussions with these forges, and they said, I will not put a QR code on my steel pipes. I've been doing steel pipes for 25 years, and there's no QR code being put on my steel pipes. Okay, well, you know, the whole industry has to change, and this is a problem for the producers in particular, because they will be liable. And I talked a lot about the catch-22. So the DPP doesn't solve the trust problem. When I talk about the trust problem is here, the producer has to rely on the first level supplier information. So when they say that this component is made out of material X, Y, and Z, it's sourced from this country. Right now, since the data doesn't flow freely, they have to trust that supplier, ultimately trusting what they say. That is a problem today, and that will continue to be a problem for some time. Data exists, like I said, but for this to actually work, all of these sources needs to be programmatically accessible. Otherwise, the burden will be too big. It's spread out in PDFs, it's spreadsheet, and all over the place. This we as service operators will have to help out with. I can talk a little bit about this. I wish I would be able to go deeper into the supply chain. We noticed that it actually stops quite early with the problems that we have to solve directly. And we say that we just put a chip on it and it's super easy, right? In our world it is. out of these 237,000 companies, I think roughly 10% might have a QR code printer, if even. That's an investment of about 237 million euros to buy each of these companies a QR code printer. So like the silly things like this, we have to address, and it starts there. And we say that we want to be non-blocking. And when we put a QR code on a product, do we have the data? Do we even know what product that's going to be? And from our experience in the project and with the actual producers, the answer is no. A producer might put a QR code that needs to be compliant with DPP before they know what the ultimate product is, because the configuration is not available until an order is made. But in their production line, they put QR codes very early because they might just have the seat of a chair. And we can't go in and disrupt all these production lines. Then we haven't really succeeded. So we're working with our system to make it non-blocking, where we can have these identifiers ready and put on things before we know what they are. And we can then fill that with data as it becomes available. We fill the data gaps by helping having tough conversations. And tough conversations can be talk to your supplier, ask them where they source that chemical for their paint. They haven't had that discussion yet. We can help with that, but there's thousands of really difficult conversations that will have to happen between today and 2027 when this goes live. Ultimately, for us, the third step here is how we engage producers today, because no one wants to do this today. That's the harsh reality. We all want to wait until the delegated act is here or it's mandatory. But once we have a conversation and we realize that the DPP is not only a data carrier, it's now a new modus of communication between the producer and who ultimately uses it. And we often overlook that the DPP will have to live for a long time, and it has been mentioned that it needs to be updated or at least append the information to it as it's being repaired or the product is amended to some degree. That is a relationship, that's a conversation, and that's fantastic. So I'll speed on here since we are a little bit behind, but as we collect information from the supply chain, as we enable new communication on the consumer side, the producer not only has overhead and pain, they actually get business value. So we talked about the producer of a certain chair, and he said, Viggo, are you telling me that I can actually buy back the legs of used up chairs? Because I would love to do that. He has no way of doing that today. We see a future where you can own a chair and you can mark it as, I'm going to go to the trash with it, or I can choose the buyback option because we can put it back into the loop. And the producer can buy the metal parts for scrap value, refurbish it, and make it a new product and keep it in the loop. This is the dream state. And ultimately, this is what we hope we can achieve. I'll skip over these. We can share these later if you want. Here, you can scan an early prototype that has been done together with Johansson Design. I would say a rather large operation in Sweden that produce quite a lot of furniture. They have a very high level of automation. They collect batch information, but they still experience, we talked the data gaps with their suppliers. They are good at having their tough conversations. And ultimately, from what we see, they will actually modify their supply chain out of having these conversations. And this is a good thing. The DPP will actually force producers to make more informed choices in their supply chain as well, not only consumers buying products. I will end on this note. We are on a mission to make it simple to create these product passports for these 237,000 companies. over half of them are mom and pop shops. We don't know yet what the line will be in the stand. If you are a 4-person company, it still looks like you are in the regulation, have to comply. Until we know anything else, that's the reality, and we have to find a solution to make it bearable for these small companies, as well as the really, really big ones. Thank you, and you can reach us, I didn't put our email here, but info@lingon.io, and thank you so much, and I hope I didn't ramble too much. Happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Viggo. Do we have any questions from the audience? Take this opportunity because after this, he's going to lose his voice.
Yes.
All
Crystal
right.
clear. All right.
Yes.
And Johan, thank you for not being offended by my SSAB story.
Perfect. Thank you, Viggo. We will move on now to the last presenter of today, Mikael Rödin from Aspect Systems. Mikael, you wanted to share your own screen, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead and try to share your screen and let me know if it's not working.
Yeah. So you can maybe let me know if it's not working.
It is working perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Mikael Rödin, and we are building, you could say, well, the infrastructure that you have sort of been talking about or requesting for a long time during these presentations. And I would like to present a little bit what we are doing there. We sometimes call it the digital highway or digitala stambanan för svensk industri och samhälle. Det håller vi på med. Vi bygger det, och jag tänkte visa lite grann här hur det kan så att säga stärka, ska vi säga, samarbetet mellan företag.
Mikael, now you switch to Swedish.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, we'll go in English, yeah. I talk in the language with which somebody talks to me, unfortunately. So let's go on. Okay, so I will give you a little bit an understanding of how you could use a digital data highway for enhancing the collaboration, you could say, with the help of the highway and the digital product passport. And what is you could say, the challenge that we need to cope with? Well, I think we've heard different, you could say, versions of what I'm showing at this picture in all the presentations here. And if you think about the situation where you have a product market, where you have Scania having trucks on the market, for them, they have a truck which is their product. In that truck, there is several kinds of components. And one of the components could be a battery pack, at least it could formerly be a battery pack from Northvolt 1. And in that battery pack, there might be a battery from yet another, in this case, a subsidiary of Northvolt. And so the thing is that Scania, they would like to buy a product from Northvolt 1 that is the battery pack. And Northvolt 1 is actually to be able to produce the battery pack. They are sourcing components from the labs. And this kind of collaboration is what we are trying to enable with our infrastructure. Another way of looking at this is that if you are, like in this case, Scania, and you would like to get the information that is required to make up your digital product passport, you have to basically go down the chain here of suppliers and sub-suppliers, and then go back through the chain here to get all this information. This you could do manually, but as we heard in Viggo's presentation, that is not a suggested way of doing it, especially if you have complex products. If you have thousands or hundred thousands of components in your product,
and there are the same amount basically of sub-suppliers, there will be a nightmare to actually put together a product passport that really works. So that's why you have to be able to do it based on the product, how the product is built up, basically. And you have to be able to do it on the data highway, which makes it possible for Scania to get information from Northvolt and Northvolt 1 and Northvolt 1 to get it from Northvolt Labs. And according to how in this case, the battery pack is put together. So the picture, the complete picture is that you have a product composition. And based on that, you have to be able to ask questions from supplier to sub-supplier, etc., and get the information back, and in an automatic fashion to be able to create your digital product passport. And that's what we enable with our digital highway. What I will do now is to give you a little bit an example. How could that look if you look into the systems? How could it look like doing this? So I have a small demo here which shows that the way it would look from you could say a customer of if you see Scania as a customer, how would it look from their system to be able to drill into the information in their sub-suppliers' systems to get the full information of a product like the battery pack for a truck. So here we can see sort of the participants on the digital highway. These are some of the towns in Sweden. If we go in here and we drill into Södertälje, we'll find Scania, and we will find the Scania warehouse in which they have one of their components, which is this battery pack. So they go into the warehouse and look at what components they have. And here they have a battery pack. If they click on the battery pack, they can see that there is a digital product passport for this pack. And this is actually then fetched from the Northvolt 1. They could go in and drill into other pieces of information like the product data sheet, like product information, like the functionality of the product. What are the functions in this product? So that means that, okay, we can see there are a set of batteries, there is a battery box, there is an electrical unit. And each of these represents maybe products from sub-suppliers. If you drill in to the battery box and see it from another perspective, you could see what is it that is inside the battery box. There is batteries and there is the electronic unit. If you go for a battery, you can see that, okay, that has also a digital product passport, and that now comes from the Northvolt Labs. The same goes for the battery. You can drill in and see the details like what were the requirements when this battery was created. What is the product information of the battery? And you can also dig deeper in and see, well, look into the data sheet to see how the weight, etc., the size of it, etc. But you can also dig into it in terms of functionality. How is the battery actually built up? It has an anode, a cathode. It has you could say the metals that is collaborating through the electrolytes. It has a housing, and it has and if you want to go into the electrolyte, you can look into it and see what is the manufacturing process of the electrolyte. And in that, you can even go in and see how was this electrolyte created. And this is the kind of drill down that you have to be able to do between companies to actually sort of get to a situation where you have an easy access to all the information, and especially when you need individual information for your individual products that you're producing. So this just shows you now how you, from the Scania perspective, could drill into the products. But what does it look like in terms of functionality inside you could say the suppliers? So what we'll do now is that we will look at it from the Northvolt 1 perspective and Northvolt Labs perspective. So here we will see then the Northvolt 1 here, and we see how they look into their system. And they go into their plant that they have in Skellefteå, and they drill down, and you can see that in Bergsbyn in Skellefteå there is this Northvolt 1, where they then have their products. And this is now their product definition of the battery pack. And the battery pack, they have sort of their model of what is it that is included in our battery pack. And here you can see that the same kind of information that you drill down into from Scania. If we then go into Northvolt Labs, which are producing batteries, and look at their products, we can see that their products is basically batteries. And so these are the sort of the top level models that they have internally. And these models are the ones that are, you could say, created and drilled down into to be able to create the information that we were drilling down into before. So if we look into the battery and we look at the information in there, we could drill in and see into the functions just as the same way as we can look into the battery pack. But now we are looking in the model that is owned, you could say, by, in this case, the Northvolt 1. To the right, we have the Northvolt Labs, you could say, digital model of their products. And the power here is that you can actually, from outside and between companies, then drill through these models. And on every level, you can get access to all the pieces of information that you have you could say, the formal right to actually reach. And with this help, then you can make automatically compositions of the digital product passport information. So we can see that we have sort of a distributed product model that gives you the full truth about how products are created and produced and which information is actually related to which product. And this is then how we foresee that the next generation of collaboration between companies when it comes to product information is really necessary to create the true digital passports of the future. So you can see here that even from Northvolt, you could drill into the same information that is actually created in the Northvolt Labs. And with that, I think we have sort of gone through a little bit what it could look like in the future when all the digital product passport functionality is available and is enabling collaboration between different companies in Sweden, but all over the world, really. Having a digital highway which is based on the internet and the security that is related and required for creating this. With that, we open up for questions. It was a very quick overview of what we believe is the future for digital product passports. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mikael. I see a few thumbs up from the audience. Any questions from the audience? All right, no questions. Oh, there we go. Anna, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Is it all in PDF form, or is the data in possible to put in a XML file?
No, I mean the data that is actually residing in the systems that is providing it. So that is in any form, you could say. So it's really each of these what we call assets are data assets where the data is stored in, could be in a PDM system or ERP system or a manufacturing system. So the data is typically fetched from where it actually resides. So it's in any format, basically.
Okay, but you put it together in PDF files?
No, we don't
No?
put
No.
it together. We just make it available.
Oh, okay.
And then you can reach the data. The data, it could be in a PDF file if somebody makes it available as a PDF. But you can also make it available just like single properties as you wish from the perspective of each of the company and each of the systems that has the data is actually exposing that in the way that system would like to expose it. And then it will be available in that fashion from that system. So the idea here is that you should not sort of double store the data in so many places. Of course, then when you have sort of your final product, you have collected all the data for your product, then you can sort of store it and you can cache it somewhere, because now you know that is actually this individual product that has this data. But before that, you should avoid double storage of the data.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Next question is from Iqbal.
Hi, do you see a system like this being publicly available? And I could see that working internally. But,
yeah, of course. I mean, I think that this will be step by step. I mean, first you work with it internally, and then you can start. Typically, what we think is that what will happen is that you would say a little bit bigger companies that has, well, in a sense, bigger problems will invest in such a system and ask their suppliers to append. So that's how we see this sort of being part of on the market. Because then it's very easy for as a sub-supplier to sort of connect their systems into this, and they do that, and they can continuously improve their products, change how they are manufacturing, but the information will still be available to their customers. So that's the idea here, is that each and every company that is part of the chain should be able to work with their own processes to make it more efficient, etc., and still be able to supply the data to the sort of the consumer of their products.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I saw a quick hand just flicker by, but I assume that hand had a question that was similar maybe to that one of Iqbal. Anyone else? No. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mikael. We will move on in the presentation. Just a second. All right. Let me see here. Just scrolling ahead to the correct slide now. Here we go. I hope you can all see my screen again. Yes, okay, good. Thank you to all of the presenters for your very informative presentations. I hope that the audience has learned a few new things, at least I have. I'm going to hand over to Yin. Do you have any a good wrap up of today? Yin, are you on the call? I assume that the sound is not really working for Yin.
Yin is there, but and she is unmuted, but we cannot hear her.
Yep. All
yes.
right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I had some issues with my headset. Sorry. Yes, I took a lot with me, and maybe what can sum up is the Johan's to-do list, which during all these kinds of different examples that we saw today, the whole process, and also diving into a few different types of specific products, that you should definitely start now by looking into what you have in your company or organizations, and find out what kind of data you already have, or how you want to display that data, and try to test it, make those pilots. And the maybe difficult thing to be able to handle all these different kinds of product groups, the standards need to be able to cover all those, and that's maybe why they are not that specific, and that's maybe also we all are waiting for the delegated acts, which are not there yet. But you can go to the next slide to see just a reminder of which standards we are out and the deadlines. So you have a lot of background now, and maybe you can try to figure out which of these standards are the most important to your organization, and which of these you should read a little bit more in detail, and also please comment, because in order to make these standards also able to be applied in your organizations, it's really important that we get as many different views as possible. So we have 8 standards, 6 of them have the deadline of comments here in Sweden that by September 1st. And we have 2 that came a little bit later, so they are September 29th and October 16th. And should you go through a few reading tips in more detail, Laura?
Yes, I can do so. So first of all, just connected to what we are seeing now on the screen, after these deadlines, all of the comments that anyone would now has the possibility to submit on all of these drafts, all of those comments that you may have are going to be looked at in our National Mirror Committee. So the National Mirror Committee has the task to together form the Swedish position on all of these drafts. We will also go through all of the comments, the inputs from external actors, and decide which of them are going to sort of make the cut and be a part of the Swedish comments to all of these drafts. So that's just good to know. There's no automatic process where anyone can submit a comment and it automatically goes to the European Secretariat. The National Mirror Committee is the filter, and we are going to spend a lot of time looking at all of the improvements that we see are needed, and we're going to look at all of the comments that come from external actors as well. So a few reading instructions. As you can see, there's a lot to read in these 8 drafts. First of all, I would say find the drafts that are specifically relevant to you and your organizations. I mean, maybe not all drafts are relevant to all actors out there. If they are, then I apologize. You're going to have a lot to read. But if not, just focus on the ones that are most relevant to your organizations. All of the drafts are naturally sort of connected, but they are in fact freestanding documents. So you should not have to understand Module 7 in order to be able to interpret what's in Module 2, for instance. So the contents are going to differ quite a lot, of course, and some parts of these documents are going to be more relevant to some actors than others. So it's difficult for me to say focus only on these parts. But there are 3 things that I want you to be very aware of, and that I do want everyone to focus on a bit more. First of all, of course, section 1, which is always scope. This is important, obviously, to understand sort of what is included and what is excluded from that specific draft. Step 2, terms and definitions. That is section 3 of all of the drafts. Because the terms and definitions, it's not just a long, boring list. It does help you to understand how key terms are defined for the use of that specific document. So it's important to know that even though we try to avoid it, sometimes a term can be defined differently in different types of standards. So if you're used to a specific term from a whole other type of standard, it may be defined differently in these standards. That's why terms and definitions are always very important to sort of read up on to be able to interpret the rest of the document. And last but not least is Annex ZA. It's the last part of all of these drafts. And this is important because this is the link between these specific standards to the regulation. This section, this annex, even though it is informative here, it shows the mandatory requirements. So when you read Annex ZA, you will also have an understanding of which clauses of this whole draft standard is referenced in the regulation. So they're sort of Annex ZA is essential for you to understand what parts of the standard or the draft standards you have to comply with. So those are the 3 things that I just want to give to you guys. Focus on scope, terms and definitions, and Annex ZA for you to be able to sort of understand better what is relevant and how to understand that specific draft. All of the drafts are available on our site kommentera.sis.se. I will write it now in the chat. On that site, you can search for digital product passports, and all of the drafts are supposed to show up to you in a long list. And that's where you also have the opportunity to provide your input to all of the drafts. And please do so. We are very happy to hear what the rest of you guys think of these drafts. So go ahead and provide your input before September 1st. We only have 3 minutes left. It's been very interesting and very informative so far. If we have any questions now left, please go ahead and raise your hand. You can always send comments or questions to us afterwards as well. But any questions now? Thomas, go ahead. Thomas, yes. I cannot hear you.
Sorry, someone had forgotten to fold down my microphone. Apologies. Thank you, Laura. I was just wondering if CIS are developing a standard or a general standard together with other countries and entities, or if you're developing a standard that will be represented or used for the Swedish market.
All of these standards are going to be European standards. So all of a whole long list of European countries are involved in this. These are not going to be specific Swedish standards. Roughly 24 different European countries are involved in developing these drafts together, with a whole long list of experts involved in the work. Some 200 to 300 experts are involved in this. They're going to be implemented as national standards because that's what we have to do with European standards. They're going to be harmonized to European to the ESPR, but no specific Swedish standards are going to be developed for the DPPs. At least not yet. We are heavily focused on the European and on the European work, and in the future potential work on a global scale as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nothing else? Then I would like to say thank you so much for joining this webinar. I hope it's been that you've learned something new. Please get back to us if you have any input or any questions, and I wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.